Hey folks, what's up? Lex here, and today I'm going to be doing my 1 month review on MLB The Show 21. I wanted to take some time and spend quality time with the game. I didn't want to rush out a review. I wanted to spend 50, 60, 70 hours with the game on both PS5 and Series X to really compare the two and to see what kind of leap we made from PS4 to PS5 and Series X. And this isn't going to be a super thorough review. This is more of an impressions kind of review. The thing about MLB The Show is that it's a really good game, but it takes small steps forward. So this year feels like last year's, and the year before felt like the year before that. But if you go back 5 years, you can really see the differences between 21 and 16. The first thing I want to kind of focus on is gameplay. And to me, gameplay is very similar from last year, which is not to say that's a bad thing because gameplay in MLB The Show is really good. The things that I noticed are that check swings seem to be much harder to pull off this year. You get called a lot more on the check swing than you did any time before. And in fact, at first I was really upset about how often you get called for a strike on a check swing, but then I kind of thought back and I was like, well, yeah, it was probably way too easy in years prior to just hold off on a swing. So not being able to hold off on a swing as much makes batting more difficult, which helps with one of my biggest problems of the show, and that was that all-star difficulty seemed to be my kind of difficulty. I'm not great at this game by any means, but it seemed to be too easy in the past. But when I would bump it up one to whatever the difficulty is after that, it was too hard. It was like every pitch I threw got crushed for a homer. And so this kind of allows me to stay on that all-star difficulty while not being able to beat the CPU as badly as I did before. It balances things out a little bit. It's weird that such a small thing like that can have a pretty big impact on gameplay overall. Fielding seems much more reliable this year than it has in the past. You still see some things where the outfielder will just completely goof on a fly ball. I have seen it where it'll just hit him in the head. That was kind of the first week. They've cleaned it up a lot, and pretty much any ball that's missed by the outfielder does not seem egregious. It seems like something that could possibly happen in real life. The big improvement here with fielding is playing the ball against the wall and off the wall. In years prior, trying to make a catch near the wall is nearly impossible because the outfielder would not go into the animation they needed to go into to make the catch. It was just super frustrating. This year, it's much different, much more reliable. They've also made robbing home runs much more difficult to do and pull off, in my opinion, and that makes things a little bit more difficult as well, going back to that check swing issue. So they've made these little tweaks that make the game more challenging, which I appreciate. I'm no longer winning every single game in franchise. It's pretty split. I'm pretty much at 500. And as for gameplay, there's not really much else to say here. Everything just feels a little more cleaned up, a little more reliable, better animations, a little more fidelity. So it's taking something that was already good and making it great. Something I'll mention now because it's a pretty big thing that touches all the different modes, but I'll talk about more when I come to franchise, is that they did change up the menu system. It's a lot more muted. It's a lot more dull, which allows certain things to pop and stand out. So I get why they did it. It's a lot more clean looking, but I'll tell you why I'm not a big fan of the menu redesign once we get to franchise mode. But first, let me get Diamond Dynasty out of the way. I'm not trashing Diamond Dynasty. What I usually do is I play Diamond Dynasty for the first few weeks of the new season, and I have fun playing it. It's a nice time waster while I wait for those rosters to get built to go into franchise mode and stuff like that. I have those cards that I want to collect. I want to collect all the A's cards. But once I do that, I lose interest. Once I have all those cards that I wanted to collect, there's really no point in me grinding out Conquest or whatever else they have going on. And I don't like playing online. So for me personally, that's where it kind of halts. But if you have the desire to go after those cards and those newly released cards, then I think that Diamond Dynasty is a really good mode for that kind of person. And I'm not an expert on Diamond Dynasty, so I couldn't tell you how much better this is over that, etc. But it seems okay to me. It seems like it's fine, like it's always been. There's nothing mind-blowingly different to me about it, but maybe someone with a little more expertise in Diamond Dynasty could shed some light on that in the comments below. So let's talk about Road to the Show. Road to the Show this year really changed things up by making you a two-way player, which means you are a pitcher and a position player. Now, I've heard from people who do not like this at all, and I agree they should have given you the choice on whether you wanted to be a two-way player or just a single position player. But I've got to say, I'm really enjoying being both a pitcher and a hitter. Usually I have to create two different players to do this, but this time I can do them both if I want to, and eventually down the road I can choose to just be a pitcher or just be a position player. So I created a guy who is a power pitcher and a power hitter, and I'm just striking dudes out left and right, and I'm hitting home runs, and it feels great. It's a lot of fun to do. One of the big things that they did this year is you really bump your attributes up very slowly. You start in the 30s, and after a season and a half, I'm just now getting into the 40s. The real boost comes from equipment, which goes back to earning XP and SP, their currency, buying packs and earning packs from the Diamond Dynasty branch of this game. Which brings me to the server issues, and I'll come back to Road to the Show. We can talk a little bit more about it, but I want to talk about the server issues right now because on their own, just confined to Diamond Dynasty, the server issues wouldn't be that big of a deal. But the problem is, it extends to every mode in the game. It really does. It branches to franchise, and it branches to Road to the Show, and it branches to March to October. And while you don't really have to worry about it, the servers do affect post-game stuff. So after you get out of a game, it has to show you what you earned, what XP you earned, and all that kind of stuff. And if the servers are down, it can say you didn't get anything. And you feel robbed, right? Or loading a menu can take a little bit longer because the servers are down. Just because it has to call on that, and it constantly has to communicate with that because you're earning rewards for Diamond Dynasty, for those packs and all that kind of stuff. If the servers worked fine, that wouldn't be such a big deal. But the servers have been very unreliable so far. They're getting a little bit better now, but those first couple of weeks, it was just a disaster. And they gave rewards as a present, as a gift, to say, thanks for hanging with us. We're sorry it went this way, but this is nothing new for MLB The Show. The servers have always been a problem for this game the first couple of weeks in, and sometimes throughout the year. So hopefully the worst is behind us with that, and we could just stop worrying about that. But coming back to Road to the Show, there's one more thing I wanted to mention about it. You get interrupted with podcast snippets that kind of talk about your player and what's going on and what they're doing. And these snippets are a cool idea, but they're just too generic for me at this point. They don't specify enough about what your player is doing to really make it all that interesting. They have interesting people that they talk to, analysts, Sean Casey, Carlos Pena, Jenny Finch, all that kind of stuff. It's cool, but it's generic, and it doesn't really hit home with what your player is doing specifically. They'll say, oh, he's having a rough time, or oh, he's having a great stretch of pitching and stuff like that. But it's not saying, oh, he went 4 for 4 with 2 home runs, and how can that help a team, and that sort of thing. So I think it's a cool idea. Maybe in execution, a little more dull than they were hoping for.
Well, I talked recently about this young player and how he had hit the skids a little bit, but it looks like he's righted the ship. I've got Carlos Pena on the pod today, and Carlos, it has to be a huge load off his mind that he's getting right at the plate.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Just a huge relief when you finally get that hit. All of a sudden, things start to fall into place. That's why I tell you, this game is so mental that really, as soon as you get that hit that breaks the slump, they seem to start to come in bunches.
All right, before we get into franchise mode, which is my big thing, let's go into March to October first. Now, March to October is kind of a controversial mode because it was built to kind of shepherd people into franchise mode. But the funny thing is that it's gotten way more attention than franchise mode has. At least it seems to me like it has. It's a very popular mode, it seems, especially to people who are not going to spend 162 hours in franchise mode on one season playing every game. They just want to go through a quick season and have things happen, and they don't want to play every inning of every game. They just want to play the big moments. I understand why this mode is popular, and personally, I find it fun to play. So one of the big things they did this year for March to October is accelerating prospect call-ups. So every team has at least one prospect that they're really looking forward to bringing up, and what this does is it essentially fast-tracks that call-up if you want, so that they join your team in the middle of this March to October season and can contribute and all that kind of stuff. Confined to March to October, if you're not going to go over into a franchise after this and basically use that save to go over to franchise, it's fine. It's fun. It's a good idea. You get to see the stars of the future for certain teams. Like, I'll probably never do a franchise with the Tampa Bay Rays, but doing a March to October with the Tampa Bay Rays, I can see the prospects that they have lined up, and Tampa Bay has a lot of prospects lined up, so that could be really fun. But the problem is, when you want to bring that out into a franchise, you run into service time issues. Now, service time is not a thing that a lot of people understand, and unfortunately, even if you play franchise without March to October, the CPU will screw up your service time manipulation, if you want to say that. Basically, service time is like a clock, and when that clock starts, that player starts to get ever closer to being paid big money. So the longer you can keep them under team control and keep them to that smaller contract, the more value you get out of that player. Well, if the time starts when you don't want it to, then that can really screw up your plans for the future. For example, the Oakland A's, which is the team that I use the most, they have a prospect named Robert Poisson. He is a 17-year-old, a potential 70 overall in the game or something like that, and they want to fast track him. Now, I would not call a 17-year-old up to the major leagues. I usually wait till at least they're 21 and go from there, but because he's highly rated in the game, they're going to call him up in March to October. Now, they give you the option to call these players up, but the thing is, even if you decline, they'll sometimes just call him up anyway. I actually had to find that out the hard way as I declined the call up, and then at one time I was down the line, I was playing a game and looked into my roster for a substitution, and there was Poisson. He was on the bench waiting to be put in, and I'm like, what happened? The CPU's roster management in this game is it is the single most frustrating thing in my experience with MLB The Show, which kind of leads me in to franchise mode. Now, franchise mode did not get a lot of love this year in terms of flashy things added. Like I said before, they changed the menu design, and personally, I hate it. I think it's a downgrade from last year. I'm having trouble remembering where things are located. It's dull, and it still has the same issues I had with the previous menu system, which is it doesn't really tell you what's going on in your league. It doesn't involve you and immerse you in your league to let you know the big happenings of what's going on. For example, if you go on Twitter and you follow a couple of MLB related Twitter accounts, for example, MLB, you're going to see what's happening in the league as it happens. And lately it's been a lot of Shohei Ohtani, right? So he's doing this big thing that's really never been done before, even by Babe Ruth standards. And you're seeing it all the time because it's exciting. And that's what is going on in the world of MLB. Well, in franchise mode, it should be the same thing. If someone's got a 20-game hit streak going, you should be following that. If a team has a 20-game win streak going, it should be, wow, look at this. And it should be a picture of the team or something. It should be appealing to the eye. It should immerse you in your league. But for the most part, you have no idea what's going on besides the standings. And that is just dull. And we've had all these years, and all these years I've been complaining about this particular thing, not just for this game, but for all sports, all franchise modes. I've been complaining it's just dull. You need to know what's going on in the rest of your league. If someone is being traded and there's a rumor mill going for that, just don't hide it in the trade block section. Put a big thing saying, you know, the Yankees are thinking about trading Garrett Cole or something like that. Of course, that probably wouldn't happen, but I'm just saying we need some excitement in this mode, and it needs to be on the front page, hitting you in the face right there, not buried away where you have to go and locate it somewhere. So the things that they did work on, basically the AI, the trade logic, how players are valued, all that kind of stuff. And that's something that is still going to take some time to really see if that got fixed or not. I still see trades that are pretty ridiculous, but not as ridiculous as before. I was able to trade Miguel Cabrera and dump that huge contract of his off to someone else. I just didn't get what I would normally get for it. So, you know, there's kind of that thing going on. I think that's just, it's going to take a lot more time for me to really mess with it and see how bad the trades can be over time. I really haven't tried too hard to exploit some trades, but there have been times where it's like, this organization would not trade this player at this moment in time, yet they're offering him to me in exchange for anything is kind of surprising. Another thing they added are the future depth charts. So you can basically see how your team is going to look a couple years into the future, which is a really cool thing. Teams use this to really map out their team. I pretty much used it once and that was it. I know my teams well enough to know that I don't need some iffy depth chart to tell me where they're going to be at a certain point in time. These are projections, of course. It's not going to tell you exactly how they're going to pan out and everything. But it's still kind of a thing where if you don't know the team very well, you can use that to get an idea of what you have in the bank, as far as prospects go, at least. They also changed the budget system from a weekly budget to a yearly budget. And, you know, it's okay, I guess. I mean, it's not something that really affected me all that badly. I could understand the weekly budget system fine. I got it. I understood it. It wasn't great. This is better, having a yearly budget to tell you what you can afford to spend on players and what you can't. But, you know, that was such a small change. I'm just overall really tired of these small changes to franchise mode. We need a revolutionary bump in these franchise modes. We deserve it. We've been putting up with this for so long now that it's time for these teams to invest the resources into these franchise modes, because they're making a ton of money off of the microtransactions and the digital content. Let's kick some of that down to franchise mode now and please those core users who have shelled out $60 for your game year after year after year. And I have no problem shelling out $60 for this game. I actually shelled out more than that because I bought the Jackie Robinson edition for PS5. But you know, you continually support the game. You want a little bit more in certain areas than you're getting. So let's end on somewhat of a positive. I do have some gripes with it, but the big new feature for me is Stadium Creator. And let me tell you, they blew me away with what they did first year for this Stadium Creator. Like, I can't believe they got what they got into this game. I was expecting it to be maybe something along the lines of what we got in MVP Baseball, where it's kind of like everything is set in stone. You're choosing from pre-modeled stuff, and you just change the backdrop and that's it. They actually made it so that you puzzle together a stadium of your own, and you can really put stuff on top of stuff. You can manipulate to make it look better. It's crazy what they were able to get into this. I'm still blown away year one that they were able to do this. You can make legit major league stadiums using this tool. But of course it comes with caveats. It's the first year of a new feature, and the big problem I have is that, one, you can't make roofed stadiums. You can't make domes or retractable roof or anything like that. So every stadium, unless you are able to manipulate it somehow, has to be an outdoor stadium. Which, that if you want to make a cold weather team, that it's not really realistic. You can put snow beyond just to make it look like it just snowed or something. But I would like to have roofed, domed stadiums be available to make in this feature going forward. But it's not a deal killer to me personally. And I was having a lot of fun building stadiums in this feature. In fact, that was a lot of my time spent early on, was just making stadiums, stadium after stadium after stadium. But then I realized that you cannot play night games in the created stadiums. And a lot of major league games these days are played at night. And I think that's just a huge oversight. I don't know if it's something they just couldn't do with the lighting or what, but having every game have to be a day game, it's not realistic. And I've seen some people who are like, I'll play my day games at this stadium and then I'll play my night games at an MLB stadium, and that takes me out of it. It really does take me out of it trying to do that. So that is a huge caveat for me, and it makes me not want to build any stadiums or even getting involved in that anymore from what I already have, which sucks because I wanted to build a new stadium for the A's. There's relocation rumors going on for the A's right now, and I think I'll talk about that in a separate video, but I wanted to do all that, but now that you can't play night games, I'm just like, what's the point? Every game has to be a day game. I would rather play in the Coliseum and be able to have night games as well. All right, I think it's time to wrap up this 1 month review on MLB The Show 21. Overall, I give it a thumbs up. I mean, this is a good game, but you can tell I have a lot of caveats overall with the game. There's a lot of things that are like, yeah, but it's great, but I want this thing to be great. No buts. No exceptions. Just great game. And I think they're on the cusp of that. And they have hinted that they're going to focus on franchise going forward, that they wanted to make these little tweaks now so they can set it up. But we know, we've heard this before, right? We've heard this thing before. Oh, we're just setting it up so we can do stuff in the future, or we plan to build it out. We want to see something. It's enough talk. Let's see action on franchise mode here. But big kudos to them on the gameplay front. MLB The Show is an absolute joy to play. I love playing this game. It's hard to stop playing MLB The Show 21. I'll play a franchise game and it'll be like, I'll play a little bit more, and then I'm to the next game. Let's play this. Roster management. I love it all. It's fantastic, but I wish that it could be just full on excellent, greatest sports game of all time kind of thing. And I know to some people it is the greatest sports game of all time if you really are into March to October, or if you're really into Diamond Dynasty. And to wrap it up, I'm going to talk about the performance on the Xbox Series X and PS5. And so far, no real complaints. I think the Series X lags a little bit when it comes to cutscenes, celebrations, and things like that. I haven't really noticed that on the PS5 myself, so I don't know if that's across the board, if other people are experiencing the same things. But the Series X so far is working out a lot better than I thought it would. Is it preferable? I don't know about that. I think I probably prefer the PlayStation controller, even the new DualSense controller, over the Xbox controller, but I tend to play more on the Xbox, and I think that's probably because I have the show digitally on the Xbox and I have the disc for the PS5, but I definitely notice myself playing the Xbox more than the PS5. I don't think that's an indictment or anything like that on the PS5 version. They're both great. I wish there were a bigger jump from PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5. For sure, it looks almost identical, so there's that. But yeah, MLB 21, the show, it's pretty good. So you're not going to get much better when it comes to baseball simulations than this. So if you're waiting, I don't know what you're waiting for, but I think you can pick it up if you were waiting, if you were on the fence. There might be some things that annoy you, like me, but overall, the game is very fun to play. And I think that they've done a really good job. I just wish they'd push it a little bit further, especially when it comes to franchise mode. All right, that's going to do it for me, folks. Thanks so much for listening to me ramble about MLB The Show 21. Maybe we'll do this again in another month or two and see where the game is at, if there's any changes, if my feelings change. I don't know. I think they're going to probably stay the same. I think this is a pretty final impressions video or review or whatever you want to call it. It's a great game. You can check out all my social media stuff down in the description below. Thanks for watching, and until next time, this is Lex, signing out.